Welcome to the Flight Club Podcast, a woman's guide to leaning out. We give you a behind-the-scenes look at business launch and growth through the stories of successful female entrepreneurs. Here's your host, Felina Hansen, founder and CEO of Hera Hub.
Hello and welcome. I am excited to share my conversation with Maggy Sterner. She is a brand and business coach. She helps entrepreneurs and small businesses get laser clarity about their brand message and find the words to describe it simply so they can attract clients. And I just have to make some commentary here on this. This is like the hardest thing for so many people to do. It's so interesting, including myself as somebody who's been in marketing my entire career. It's like we're too close to it. So Maggy believes people hire you when you know who you are, you own your brilliance, and stand for it with confidence and conviction. And I love this. Her superpower is helping her clients see the superpower that lives in their blind spot. So welcome to the show today, Maggy.
Thank you so much, Felina. It's great to be here.
Wonderful. Well, let's dive in. Take us back. Who are you? What was your career path? What did you do before you got your superhero on and started your own business?
My career path has been a very long and winding one, and started back in the day when I was just a really big music lover. That was really what got me started, and I listened to the radio all the time when I was a kid. And I decided one day that I wanted to work in radio. And I didn't know how I was going to get there or what that was going to look like, but I just knew I wanted to work at a radio station. And when I got out of school, when I was younger, I became a secretary. That was my foot in the door to every place.
And where did you do that?
I grew up in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania.
And what was that first secretarial? What type of company were you working for?
I worked for a company that was a nonprofit, and they were a German-American association. They promoted German-American programs and languages and things with students between Germany and the U.S. And it was really interesting because I got exposed to European culture. And growing up where I did in a little row house in Philadelphia, it was my first access point to how big the world was. Working with people who weren't Native Americans and who also were not native Philadelphians, I got to see how big the world was. And I went, oh, that's where I want to go, the world.
That's awesome. I love that. So where did you go from there?
I bounced around with different secretarial jobs. I was young, and it was, I decided I wanted to work at a radio station. And so I applied for a job as a secretary at a radio station. And they gave me the job, but then they ended up retracting the offer because I didn't have a car. And it was just outside the city limits, and I couldn't actually get there. I was devastated, completely devastated. And I was working as a temp in some law firm, and the guy there wanted to hire me and said, but I said, thanks very much. I said, but really and truly, I'm looking for a job at a radio station, and the minute I get one, I'm going to quit. And he said, you need to talk to my friend Harry. And Harry worked at a radio station, and it was on the bus line. And I got the job. And so that was my first job in radio.
On that, Maggy, for a second, because I love that you just spoke your truth, right? You didn't dance around it. You're like, yo, I'm out of here. And you said what you wanted, and it was delivered.
It was. And what was really interesting, and I was just talking about this today, I did a live video online, and when you tell people what you do, when they can get it, they can actually help you, right? Yeah. If you don't tell people, you can't get help. And I think of it like verbal crowdsourcing, or brand crowdsourcing. The minute I said it out loud, he happened to be somebody who could help me in my journey. And if I had said nothing, no help for me. Like I would have never met Harry and my career wouldn't have gotten launched. So, I mean, that's why I'm really hardcore about being able to clearly articulate what you do, what you want, and how you help people. So that, because it's like enrolling, like we're enrolling others to help us in our path, right? And if we keep it to ourselves, it just doesn't work for like helping others or helping ourselves.
You're right. And people want to help in general.
They
Most
do.
people want to help. And so I know that's my dreaded, I'll chat with maybe some student graduating, so what type of job are you looking for? And they're like, I'll take anything. And I'm like, no, never say
No,
that.
no, no, no,
Oh my
no.
goodness.
Yeah.
Okay, so keep going here. Sorry for the little
No,
derailment.
that's okay. No, it's fine. No, but I thought that was like, and I was thinking about that story. I was like, yeah, because I said something, because
Yep.
I articulated clearly, he was like, oh yeah, I can help you. And yay, right? It all worked out. And one thing led to another, as it does.
As it
I
does.
said that once. I said, you know how some nights one thing leads to another, and a bunch of women, I was like, no, we don't know anything about that. We don't know anything about those kind of nights. I ended up working at this rock station in Philadelphia. It was one of the top rock stations in the country. I was the receptionist, and I finally got to wear blue jeans to work. And, it was the time of, all the rock stars would come through. Rod Stewart, Bruce Springsteen, like all of the big players. We were connected to the top of the top. And I decided I wanted to be on the air. I wanted to have an air shift. So I'd come in on the weekends and make little tapes and give them to the program director. He'd be like, yeah, well, go to Donkeyville, Montana, and then, work your way up through the ranks and come back. And I was like, okay. And then one day he said to me, oh, yeah, Michael can't work for 6 weeks, so we're going to put you on the air at 2 a.m. on Monday. And I said, okay.
That's awesome.
Yeah, so I got a job on the air. And again, I'm actually just seeing this for the first time. What I'm seeing is I said something. I made my interest known, right?
Yes. You spoke up. Yeah, you didn't,
I did.
It's not just play the game, as a lot of times we're told, say this, do this, respond this way, so you can slowly inch your way up. It's like step forward, say what you want, and go for it. I love that you did that.
Right. And he was like, yeah, no, that's never going to happen here. You need to go beat your way back here through the bushes out in the, someplace else, which is traditionally how it's done. And I was like, well, okay, well, that's cool. So I went on the air at 2 a.m. And a friend of mine who came in and helped me get set up with coffee and wire copy, and I knew how to run the machinery, and boom, that was it. And then I ended up with an air shift on the weekend, and I got promoted to music director. And so that was how I eased into from being a secretary to, working in broadcasting. And then, so that was Philly. God, this is a million years ago. That's how old I am.
Well, it looks like
it was great fun.
It looks like you started to make the bridge maybe back and forth a little bit based on what I'm seeing on your LinkedIn profile. You worked for CBS, you worked for NPR. So you went kind of into the video side of things as well throughout this experience.
I did. I was studying broadcast journalism in Philadelphia, and I ended up getting a job at a TV station where I was in charge of running the microwave truck. I was the audio girl. They used to call me the sound wench. I was the second woman they hired for that job. This was back in the 80s, 1980s, not 1880s. And but I was there, and they I loved it. It was a great job for me because every day was different. Like, I have no attention span, so I have to be constantly doing new things. But again, it was a case of I wanted to come inside and work as a writer. And I had just had an article published in the local newspaper with photos that I took. And they refused me the job. They gave it to somebody else. And after I got done crying in the stairwell, I went in and said, okay, clearly we have a problem. What is it? I need to know. I can handle it. And no, we love you. You're the best, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, okay, cool. And then I finally realized, time to put your money where your mouth is. If you're really serious about being on the air or being a writer, like writing news, you need to go get a job and do that someplace. So I did. I went to some little tiny radio station in New Jersey, and then inched my way back to working at a TV station in Miami. So I ended up like the broadcast news venue was really my place.
Mm.
I liked it because it was exciting. It was crazy. There were homicides. It was like exciting. It was like working in the emergency room of a hospital. It's like that's the vibe in a TV newsroom. Something's always crashing. Somebody's having a nervous breakdown. The first time I had to go on the air and be a show producer for the local news, 30 seconds before air, I hear in my earpiece, "We don't have page one."
Okay.
Right, but it's like, you have to be able to dance with that.
Yeah.
And I whisper in the ear of the anchor, I said, "Oh, let's start with page 2." And the look on this guy's face was like, oh my God. But, it's just what it is. You got to roll with it.
Yeah, absolutely. So I see here too, I mean, again, through some of this experience, again, CBS News, NPR, I mean, these are huge organizations, very well known. I mean, you note here you were covering breaking and feature news in Manila and Johannesburg. I mean, so were you traveling a bit for this, or were you covering that from home? Just, talk about some of these experiences.
It was some travel involved. In Manila, I didn't travel throughout Asia. I stayed in the Philippines and traveled throughout the Philippines. So I was fortunate enough to be there when there was a gigantic coup. That was the first big story against Corazon Aquino, who was the president for 7 days. The whole country shut down while the rebels took over everything and had snipers on top of all the buildings. And then, but I stayed in Manila. We had an earthquake. We had the coup. Imelda Marcos returned from Hawaii. She'd fled the country with her husband, and now she was returning for the first time. So I got to cover some really great stories, which were super fun. And again, I guess I love danger, right? Like brushes with death. Like no day is complete unless, you nearly die from a volcanic eruption. But it was interesting that having to you put a gun to your head and you have to deliver something verbally. I had to deliver the bottom line for a really intense, complicated thing in 40 seconds. And I think that's what really informs the work I do today. Because people, like when we have to say an elevator pitch or write marketing copy for ourselves and market our brands, we have to be able to boil it down to the essence. What is the actual thing we're trying to communicate here? So I think when I look back now, I see the thread running through it all was I was compelled to look to see what the bottom line was in any situation that I was in, especially when it came to news stories. And when I moved on to working on the web and we're doing technical work, and I worked at NPR's website. I've managed multilingual websites. I'm like a geek to human translator. I actually trademarked that phrase. I speak human and I speak geek, and I'm the person that they don't ever want to speak to each other. But what they're always looking for is like, what's the bottom line? What's the thing we're really trying to solve? If there's a problem, there's one little tiny thing in there that's causing the problem. What's that thing, right? Because the symptoms may not tell you. You got to be a detective. So it's sort of a combination of, I'm like, I accidentally became a reporter for CBS News because I happened to answer the phone in the middle of the night. And I'm like, who accidentally becomes a reporter? And I'm like, oh, somebody who's compelled to uncover secrets, right? Like that's the driving force. So my client's secrets, my client's superpower, the thing they really do, what they really deliver, why people really hire them is the secret that I'm looking for. They already know, but none of us can see our brilliance by ourselves. I think we can only see it in reflection. So I come in like the reporter or like the brand detective and help them figure out, oh, here's what's happening, right? And now we're going to turn that around into a 4-sentence elevator pitch that's going to have people go, oh my God, I totally need you.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, it's such an important skill set, as we mentioned at the top of the show here, and so many people need it. And as you said, because we're basically too close to it. You can't see your own brilliance when you are so close to it. So you really carried your work continue, it looks like, into the world of, web. Basically, you spent some time in the nonprofit sector, it looks like, working on the campaign for tobacco-free kids. What was that like?
Mm-hmm. I worked they had a multilingual website, and because I had experience as a multilingual I had worked on multilingual websites before, and they have unique challenges, let's say. I worked there, and they were just in the process of rolling out a new content management system, and because I speak geek and human, I was uniquely qualified to help make that happen. But there was also a piece of it where content had to be translated. So they had to translate English content into 7 languages: Russian, Chinese, Arabic, and a few others. And so the departments would deliver content in English. And what I also saw was when people, if you can't translate it, like figures of speech can't be translated.
Yeah.
They have to be clear, right? Like you can't say a rolling stone gathers no moss. You have to say something that's moving. It doesn't attract. That's a bad metaphor. Let's
yeah. No, I
out.
get what you mean. Yes.
Yeah, but I've also realized, that's interesting, because it also applies to people when they try to communicate about what they do. If my brain has to translate what you just said, you're not clearly communicating it. You've got to tell me what you mean, not just the words or the jargon that goes with it. You've got to deliver it. It's like a communication laser, right? You're really trying to shoot. I think of it like tennis. Like I'm trying to hit a ball over the net to somebody, and I want them to be able to receive it and hit it back to me. I've got to send it over intentionally and smoothly. And if at any point they can't figure out where it's coming from, the minute they have to translate, this is a neurological part of receiving communication and communicating about what you do. It's like your message gets lost, and now you've lost the momentum. You've lost them. Like you have a few minutes to get that message through. So, and if you can't do it, then it just doesn't work. So, campaign for tobacco-free kids, that was an interesting job, and that's where I realized that I don't thrive in captivity as an employee, because I was personally affronted when I had to ask for vacation time. I thought it was demeaning. my colleague was like, I don't even know what you're talking about. I'm like, oh no, it's demeaning. Like, how dare, like, I'm a woman of a certain age. I don't ask permission to go on vacation. And I really loved them. They were great people. I had like, everybody there was awesome. And I just realized I couldn't do what I needed to do there. And I just decided that was it. I had to go. And then I was on the fence for a while. And the minute I decided and got clear and made a choice, somebody emailed me who'd worked there before, said, hi, I'm working at the Mayo Clinic now, and we need to do a thing. And I need your help. Can you help me find somebody? And I'm like, oh, you actually have a million things to do before you find somebody, but I can help you do that. And I ended up and so that was my first consulting gig. I thought, wow, that's interesting. The minute I just picked something, the life preserver landed, right?
Yeah.
I was like, huh. So I have a million sayings, and one of them is, you think we're hanging on to our fear and our excuses like they're life preservers, but really they're cinder blocks, right?
Mm-hmm.
The universe can't support waffling. It's got no job to do.
Yeah.
And the minute I picked, boom, there it was right there. And I went, that's pretty cool. And then I got into coaching, like one thing led to another. I get bored very quickly, so I decided there was a part of web development that really intrigued me that is called discovery, where you spend time trying to figure out what people are trying to do and why they want to do it. And I noticed people were having huge revelations there, and sometimes crying and really connecting with a very deep part of them that they were trying to do something they cared about deeply. Mm-hmm. And I thought, yeah, that's the part I care about. I want to learn how to get better at that discovery process, which led me to coaching, which led me to being a brand coach. And I couldn't figure out what I did. I was like, well, how do I, websites, journalism, photography, photojournalism, super geek. I'm like, what do I even do? Like, I didn't know. And I finally hired somebody who helped me. And in the process of my articulating and problem solving out loud and verbally, in that process, I was able to see the thing that I did. And I called it brand coach. I didn't even know if those words existed. I just made them up.
Wow. I love that, through your own experience of discovering of all your many talents and being able to very clearly articulate, the brilliance you bring to the world. So this evolution, it sounds like it was, of launching your own business. It wasn't this, got pushed off the cliff moment like some of us exactly. But it sounds like you just really evolved into an entrepreneur because you saw the opportunity there and you didn't want to be constrained.
I did not. And also I've realized I've always been an entrepreneur. Like, my very first entrepreneurial thing was when I was little. I made lemonade, and I had a little, radio flyer wagon, and I went door to door selling lemonade. I was like ringing people's doorbells, and I can remember the surprised looks on their face. And like, hi, ding dong, would you like some lemonade? And they were like, no, not really.
You didn't
bring lemonade to your house, right?
We'll get it for you, and I'll be right back. No.
I had all the cups and everything in my little wagon, but I was like, I always had some kind of like, if it wasn't that, then it was selling comic books. When I was, in college, I started my own other business. Like, I always had that entrepreneurial spirit, and also the jobs I've had where I've really done well. NPR, I made up my own job in the company. CBS News, I did whatever I wanted under the auspices of CBS News. I was an entrepreneur inside the company. Yeah. Like, those are the conditions under which I thrive.
I love it. I love it. Well, let's dive in a little bit to your business. You're a brand coach, business coach, elevator pitch coach, speaker. You really help people do what we've been talking about this entire time, get very, very clear on who they're speaking to and how to articulate what they do. What does that look like? Do you work one-on-one? Do you work with groups? How do you work?
Well, I work one-on-one with clients. I do live workshops. I started what I call my show last year called Live Your Superpower Live, and I bring on guests to talk about who are experts in branding or in business development, who are fun and dynamic, and who help me, help my people, I call them my people, learn more about specific niche areas, like how to market yourself to get covered by the press, or how to DIY your own graphic design and do it on a budget. So, and the main criteria is fun. I was like, I've always wanted to have a show and I'm sick of talking about it, so I'm just going to have one. And here's what it is, boom. And amazingly, it's like grown my list like 800% in the last 2 years. And that was unexpected. I just did it because I thought it would be fun. So I do one-on-one coaching. I do my monthly show. I just started a group program, Pitch Power group program, craft an elevator pitch that attracts clients, which filled up very quickly. I realized that this is really a suffering. Like, people really suffer from this. I don't suffer from it, so it's hard for me to grasp it. But I was like, wow. So I started this program, and people, it's a slog, but I got you, right? Like, you're on the high wire, but I got you. And working with groups makes it possible for me to help more people. I love working one-on-one, but working in a group, it's like, oh, great, now a bunch of people are going to know who they are and what they do, which means more people out in the world are going to get helped. Having the ability to have an impact, when I have an impact on more people, they go out and they have an impact on more people. And, ultimately it leads to, and the world's a better place because we're all helping each other. And we all make our small contributions in the way that we do. But because we're all connected, it's like this beautiful, I think of it like a beautiful web, where we all If everybody's out there doing their best and living their superpower, then, it can't help but rearrange the molecules in the world. I guess that's really what my agenda is. It's funny when I when I interview people, when I have calls with people to see whether we're a good fit, when I ask them what their selfish reason is for doing their work, I was really surprised to hear that almost all of them say, I want to make a difference. I want to help other people.
Yeah.
And I went, that's interesting. And now I've realized, we don't always realize things immediately, but I'm like, that's the number one criteria. My ideal clients are only people who want to make a difference. If you came to me and said you want to be an influencer, that's a different coach. I'm not the coach for you.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that. It's so interesting, Maggy, because we're coming full circle here. Of course, what you're talking about is what you did in that first opportunity you had. You knew who you were. You knew what you wanted. You could speak to it, succinctly, and that person helped you, take that step, that big step into your career, and that's what you do for others, which. Again, I just want to emphasize this. It seems so simple, but it's not. It is probably the hardest thing that I have seen. I mean, I've been an entrepreneur 16 years, and just in business in general, not even, this expands beyond entrepreneurs, these smart, very accomplished people. And you ask them the simple question of, what do you do? Or, briefly tell me about you. And they go
lose
in
their
1,000 directions. I know.
They lose their minds. They go, well, I have a degree from Harvard and I used to work here and blah, blah, blah. And I go, no. Tell me what you do. Who are you? Who do you help and how do you help them?
Exactly.
And then it's like, I can't really help myself. Like, I was in London earlier this year and I'm on the tube and I was talking to some guy and I'm like coaching him about his life purpose. And I'm like, oh my God, get a grip. Like, you don't have to be coaching all the time, but I can't help it. And I think one of the clues that guides us to, well, what's my calling? What should I be doing? I think it's the thing that you sort of can't help yourself. You're just doing it all the time. It's the only conversation you really want to be in.
Yeah.
And you're always you can't stop yourself from wanting to make a difference in a particular way. And I think sometimes it's worth paying attention to what that thing is. What do people always come to you for? And it also harkens back to like when we're little. There's a full circle somehow. And when I was a little kid, like you couldn't hide anything from me. I would find it all. I was the woman. I just had to uncover every mystery in a 1,000,000-mile radius, whether it was the Christmas presents or whatever, or who did what to whom. And my mother always said, she said, you could find a cat that had kittens. And I went, oh, that's it. I always had that. I had to uncover the mystery, right? And so for clients, for businesses, it's like, oh, you're a puzzle. You're a little mystery to me. Tell me your story. And then I go, oh, here's what it is. I can just see it, right? That's my thing. But then again, it took me having to go to another coach to help me because I had a glimmer and it was around communication, but in order to really get it more laser focused, I think we can only really see ourselves in reflection back to us.
Yeah, absolutely. We all need support. As we said multiple times, we are too close to it to really have that perspective. Well, with that, Maggy, what is on the horizon for your business?
Well, I am, for the first time, actually branching out. I've been doing a lot of speaking engagement this year. And next year, I'm starting the year off with my very first keynote speaker presentation at a nonprofit talking about clarity, which is my jam. Mm-hmm. So I really want to expand. I'm expanding out into the speaker market, offering more master classes. I'm running Pitch Power again in February. I'm also going to be starting a coaching membership site, which is, I can see like so many people need help, but not everybody really wants to get involved in a 6-month or a 3-month coaching program. So this is more for, I'm having an open office hour for 2 hours a month. Come and get help. Bring all your questions. let's all get in there and figure it out together. I had a coaching call with my group today, and everybody's just, everybody's reflecting back to everybody else. And this is where I believe the magic happens. So I think branching out into groups and getting the message out into the world, because my core belief is, when you know who you are and you can stand there and own it with right-sized confidence and articulate it clearly, you get to live your superpower.
Absolutely. Love it. Well, if our listeners want to get in touch with you, what's the best way for them to do that, Maggy?
Go to MaggySturner.com and go to my contact page. I'm Maggy with a Y, but even if you don't type in if you type in the other one, it'll redirect you to the correct spelling of my name. I had to be that girl.
No, I like it. Absolutely. That's the digital footprint. You're training Google to find you. I love it. Well, Maggy, thank you so much for your time today. It's been really, really fun getting to know you better.
And thank you, Felina. I've really enjoyed it.
Thank you for joining this week's episode of Flight Club, sponsored by Hera Hub. We look forward to sharing more success stories with you soon.